Hello everyone, welcome to my next free tutorial Friday, and just time for a quick one this week as I'm actually a little under the weather from all my various travels. So I thought this week I would just do a really quick um, tutorial, not really about how to do a nice rendering, but really about how to approach the rendering from the beginning. So I'm going to do two lighting scenarios of this sketch from my book, Start Your Engines. So I'm just going to start first with a little bit of top lighting, and it's really just to investigate and explore two lighting strategies for the same shape. And so you can see I just took my sketch, put it on multiply, put a medium gray background on there, and now I'm just using sort of a big soft airbrush. And like I said, I'm not making any paths. This isn't meant to be a nice rendering tutorial. It's really meant to be about the strategy and thinking about all the surfaces and how they align to the light. If you want the more technical application of this sort of thing, it would be found on my matte surface rendering DVDs with the Gnomon Workshop. It's this sort of thing, but much more technical, like how to really assign the values. In this case, it's really just going to be exploring two lighting strategies. So, like I said, I'm top lighting it, and if you're really thinking about this thing, if I was strictly top lighting it with soft lighting from above, I wouldn't get any light shining inside those dished wheels. So I've actually moved the light a little bit towards us, our viewing position, and that's going to allow me to shine a little bit of light inside those dished wheels, which helps me to show the form. And so I've just put in a little dark background, and the reason I put in the dark background there was so that the light across the top of the vehicle, right, was held by a contrasting value of the background, and that helps it to look to be more visible because of that contrast. And you'll see that I have a dark shadow on the ground below it, and so I wanted to keep my ground plane lighter. Also, I'm lightening here a little bit more because the top light is going beyond the car and going onto the ground plane. And I'm just adding a little bit of reflected light there from the ground plane. And I'm just going to darken in. And this is kind of like the really super quick value block in. Let's see, I think this thing probably took about real time, maybe about, let's see, about 10 minutes maybe to render out. And it's just really, before I would invest a lot of time making paths, making a nice line drawing, cleaning it up, etc., I'd want to see if the forms are reading. So there it is without the line drawing. You can sort of squint your eyes and see all the forms are working. And I'm not worried really about applying the perfect values at this point. I'm just going to black out the windows. Just put it on a multiply layer. And so these are really, I think, good to do as just little quick comps. And in the past, what I would do if I was doing traditional media, in this case, I would just take that line drawing, go to the copy machine, make 2 or 3 copies, grab some markers and colored pencils and things, and then do a quick variation just to see which one shows the form the best. And so here I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of a reflective matte metallic surface. It's kind of a magic material or a fake material, let's say. I'm not really accurately plotting the position of those reflective metal flakes in there. So imagine you had a matte surface, which is what it was before. I added a color dodge layer on top, set the mode to color dodge. I'm just using a regular airbrush at this point, set to, can't read that, probably around 15% opacity or 10. And then I'm just coming back in here and taking a guess at where my line of sight would bounce up to the light source. And I'm brightening those up. And what that does is it increases the contrast. And because the human brain interprets form through value change, when you have more contrast, right, we see more value change. And since it's a scruffy line drawing, I wanted to bump that contrast a bit. And there I just put a little light value in the background because I want my glass to be a little reflective, and I want to show that curve because this vehicle has a very curved windshield. And so when you're doing these lighting strategies and these quick comps, what you want to think about is, what's important, one, in this view, why did you do this drawing from this perspective angle, and what's the form you're trying to illustrate. And so that's usually the lighting that you pick is meant to illustrate those forms, which is usually the reason you did the drawing in that direction in the first place. So The reason I put that background value over there because this is a very round windshield in top view, so I wanted to show that. So I needed something to reflect, and by adding the value change of reflecting something lighter, a light spot in the background, right, the net result is reflecting something light gives me a little value shift, which then my brain sees as a form change. So now I'm going to flip the lighting. I'm just going to do two of these. One with soft lighting from above, and this other one I'm going to do with side lighting. And this would be the case like, sunrise or sunset, cars driving along the road, very low angle of lighting. And so you have to adjust the cast shadow. So here I'm just tucking it under the vehicle because I have this low angle of light. And so the net result in this case, right, it's in the top one, and I'm going to switch between the two at the end of this little tutorial. With the top lighting, it was very easy to connect the vehicle to the ground because we had that strong shadow. In this case, it sort of makes the vehicle body look like it's lower to the ground because the shadow sneaks up closer to it. But it also looks like it's floating a little bit. So it can be a bit of a challenge sometimes to connect a vehicle to the ground with this sort of lighting. But this is also a very efficient way to render because most of the big surfaces are going to stay light. So it sort of in digital rendering, it doesn't matter because you can use white as equally as easily as you can use black. Whereas if you're doing traditional media sketching, right, this would be efficient because on a white piece of paper, most of the vehicle would be light value, and then I'd only have to darken across the top, right, because the side of this vehicle is receiving most of the light, not the top, which is the reverse of the previous lighting setup. So a lot of times when I'm doing traditional media sketching and I want to add some value, the quick thing to do is one, use soft lighting so you don't have to do a very accurate cast shadow. Two, I take the surface, the side of the object that's most visible, and that's what I light because then it stays mostly white. So here I'm talking about there's a section change across there. That little flat around the fender lip there and the side body are about equal. So that means the values should be equal, meaning the sections are similar. And if I was going to do a tighter rendering, this is a way that I like to work. I like to do a quick block out where I just get all the values working. I can see all the forms, but the value application is not very sophisticated. And so I would just grab, in this case, to do a paint over, I'm grabbing like a big elliptical hard edge brush. And you can see now by doing subtle value changes, and I just put a little bone line there, a little crease coming out of that triangle window shape. Not that you could really actually have that happen, but just to show and demonstrate how subtle you can be with value changes and how well your brain will interpret those as a form change on the object. And so I'm just have an airbrush here, and this is the way I would paint back over the top if I was going to clean it up. If I was going to go really tight, I'd probably make a bunch of paths, set up my layers. But if I was just going to sort of free paint back on top and start to sculpt the form, much more like it felt like it was, a clay model or something, this is the way I'd start to balance those subtle changes in value by painting just over the top with a cleanup layer. So that's all I'm demonstrating here, is how to go back in and start to refine those values. And that's the method I would use, just sort of a cleanup layer on top. And here I'm going to adjust my values overall using levels a bit. And I'm going to readjust that painting that I did, that I modified. It was just a little too contrasty. So that's really, we're closing in on it. So really quick one this week. Sorry, it can't be a little longer. I'm just under the weather. So a couple little hot spots again. I'm doing the same thing as before. I've got a color. Is this a normal? Sorry, it looks like a normal layer. It's just a little more rendering. Trying to get the forms to show with this side lighting. And in a moment, you're going to see how they look quite different. The side lighting versus the top. And this is reflective, and there's a strong light source off to our right. Okay, and I'm saying that that's where my line of sight would bounce over to that light source. So I put a big, strong reflection of that hot spot from our light. There it is without the line drawing turned on. See, very, very scruffy. Not meant to be a super tight rendering this week, just really quick comps to explore lighting strategies and see which way does the vehicle, in this case, it could be any object, right? But which way does it look better? And does it illustrate the forms that I was trying to communicate with the line drawing? And here I'm just going to quick paint out that shadow that was from my line drawing. When I do my line drawings, I almost always default to top lighting because it helps shows the top view of the object on ground plane, and I'm not going to worry about casting the shadow properly off into the distance. In this case, just let it fade. Okay, now let's have a look at the two differences. So there's my side lighting, and here's top lighting, side lighting, back and forth, and you can see the differences. So you would pick which one you think works best and maybe do even another comp. And that's a way that I like to start and explore lighting strategies before I commit to doing a big rendering. So I hope you find that helpful. What I'm doing is I am going to pull a page out of Liftoff, and this is a page of my lefty sketches. And I'm a righty, so that's why all my vehicles in this case are pointing the other direction. And what I want to do is just talk about indicating form with value. So I'm just going to take a quick copy of this one, open a new file, paste it, take this guy, close it, and go here. And of course, now that I'm painting with my right hand, I've got to flip this because all my vehicles always go to the left when I'm painting or drawing with my right hand. And let's check the image size. Quite small, but that's probably, let's make it 2500. That's good enough for this one. So what I want to talk about this week, I thought it would be fun to just recap a few of the basics. I got quite a few questions about rendering and showing form and things like that. So let's just put a layer here. Let's put this on multiply. Since I'm also pressed for time this week, I'm not going to pre-record and then edit and speed things up and then lay down audio. Just do both at the same time. So this is going to be real time. So let's get to it. I'm just going to fill a medium gray background. So the way your brain interprets form, if you've seen my Gnomon DVDs on matte surface rendering, it's going to be a little bit of that same sort of talk because the fundamentals and the physics just don't change. But if you want to know more about it, that's a good spot to check it out. But what happens is our brain interprets form through value change and not through color change. So if I want to start to show form across this surface, let's put a layer underneath it. Actually, maybe if I can go super fast, see if it looks like it's sealed up all the way around, maybe I can just pull that off of the background. Keep in mind it's set to multiply, that's why you're seeing that, right? That's why it selects this weird edge out here. I'm going to just do that and delete it, which I've done. Here, you know, we'll just go back on that one and let's just make it normal so you can see the white. Okay, let's go here, normal, and now just quick magic wand just for a quick gross, you know, selection, and that's been deleted. So now I've got that, and now I'm going to take this, you know what, sorry, going back even further. Here's another thing. If you have a nice line drawing, it's nice to make a copy of it, and then when you start painting with the value, you can always turn this guy on multiply and leave it across the top. So I'm going to just duplicate my line drawing before I do this step and delete out the background. And now I can take this and adjust levels, and I can darken it down. Okay, and so I like to go like a middle value just to get started. This is not going to get super technical. This is really just like the classic illustration techniques of make things go bump, basically. So your brain interprets form change through value change. So the simple thing to remember is whenever you want to create a form change, induce a value change. So I mean, just put a gradation on there, and then the surface will go bump. So if you see, I've set up my background here, and I've gone dark at the top and then light at the bottom. And the reason for that is that I plan to just do simple top lighting on this little spaceship guy here. And so that's going to give me sort of lighter values across the top and darker across the bottom. So I did the background in the reverse. So dark across the top and then light across the bottom. And that's so I can still see that silhouette. So it's really the super simple way to do this is just put this silhouette layer on preserve transparency now that I have the silhouette. Okay, and as you do that with this button, just lock it. Then the really quick and dirty way, if you have no time at all, like I do this week, you could just go and grab a color dodging brush. In fact, we could do it on top, or you just leave it all in one layer, is even simpler. And I'm just going to color dodge here to white, and you could just simply go in and start to pull up. That's a little bit fast. Color dodging works really quickly. Okay, you could just go back and start to pull up any surface where the light's landing on it. And I don't know what's happening down through here, but now it's our time to make that stuff up. So maybe I'll think this thing sticks out a bit. And it's kind of nice, just is the side view, but you can really start to show the form. So if it's a matte surface, wherever the light's hitting perpendicular to the surface is the brightest. Wherever it's tangent to the surface, of course, we get a core shadow with a terminator, right? It's also known as a terminator, where we put the core shadow. And you basically just start to make stuff go bump, all right, like I said before. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm just color dodging. That's maybe got a little bit too strong there, but that's all right. And you can start to see how our brain starts to see form. Maybe I'll make that little bone line stick out there. Okay, so this is a really fast, simple way to do it. The flip side of that is you could do a, you could burn it in here, as opposed, that's a reverse of color dodging, or you could just throw a layer on top, which gives you more control. Okay, when you pass over the division line, hold down the Alt or Option key, and you'll get a clipping path layer. And we can put that on multiply, and just to darken down what's already there. Then we can grab a airbrush, grab some darker value, and we can start to darken. And I'm using on a multiply layer so that it doesn't lose all my lines underneath. So what you do here usually is you look to the outside of your silhouette and you see that this is an undercut. So that means this part is in shadow. Okay, and then you have to wrap that over into the side of the vehicle. And so usually use the silhouette as your guide. This is probably kind of vertical through here. This is way in shadow back there. So let's just drop that in. Okay, and then right through here, I'm going to say the light's probably tangent right up here at the top, because that looks like it's leaning under a little bit. It could be leaning out. We don't know. It's side view, so you can sort of do whatever you want with the value and experiment. And then maybe I'll tuck that back under there. Okay, and I'm going to put a little core shadow through here. Leave a little reflected light. You can always come back. Well, it's a multiply layer, so it won't matter if you grab that background and start painting over. It's only going to get darker because it's a multiply layer. So really just laying in my darkest darks at this point. And then we come back and paint between the two values and start to smooth it out with as much time as you have available. All right, and you might say, well, it's a little bit strong. The nice thing is it's on a separate layer, so just knock it back a bit. Okay, and then I usually throw a cleanup layer on top, still going to match my silhouette, and then you just go in and start to do cleanup. In this case, I'll start with the darkest darks again, and push these holes in here, push that darker. Maybe these are some vents of some sort through here. Let's see, what do I want to do? Do I want to put, let's just do, let's take this and let's make it glass. So let's just grab that. Command Shift J, which is Command Shift new layer via cut. And there's my, let's see, whoops. Hold the phone. Somebody was on the wrong layer. Command Shift J. Put that on top, and I've lost my layer organization, so just realign your clipping masks, and there is my canopy. So what I'm going to do is probably just put this on multiply for now, and that it's also, then we see through to the color and value. Well, there's no color here, but the value of the background, should there be any stripes or details or something, you could see back to that. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to paint. Let's see, turn off preserve transparency, and I'm going to paint an interior. So let me just quick rough in an interior. And let's see, this is a nice time to show some scale. So that's my guy, there's his seat. And he's got some breathing apparatus on. And there's a little dashboard, IP, some instruments, and there we go. That's my guy. And I'm going to go to this layer and add a little bit of glare, a little clipping path layer over the top. And let's go here. Actually, this guy's set to multiply. That probably is not going to work. And the reason I say that is that if I want to go lighter over the top and it's going on top of the multiply layer, I don't think that works. So let's just put it here. And let's see, how should I build that? Multiply layer, which I like for the tinting. And let's just go ahead and paint a little bit of reflection on that. Softer airbrush, something lighter, and we're just going to reflect a little bit of the bright sun above in this case. So just a little specular highlight, which is basically just a bit of glare. So something like that. Let's make that brighter. Alright, so just a little reflection of the sun above. And all I'm going to do to clean that up is just erase it back to my silhouette. Or you could hold down, Command, and click, and you can get the selection of our silhouette of the glass. And then you can go here, Command Shift I, and delete, and that will clean up everything outside of that I overpainted. And that's just enough to give me a little, for doing a really, really loose quick sketch, that's enough to see that, oh, that thing's shiny, I can see through it because I see the interior, see the guy, and that's all you really need for a super quick sketch. And now it's kind of refinement time. Let's see, we could probably add a little bit of reflected light to the bottom. So I'm going to collapse all these into my base layer here. Turn back on Preserve Transparency. And now I'm just going to start free painting on top of it with a little bit of the reflected light. So I'm just picking the value below and bringing that into any of the surfaces that are oriented, normal to the ground plane that has a bit of lighter value. So maybe this curves back towards that plane. And now you can see I'm losing my line drawing because I'm just painting with an airbrush right over the top. Okay, so, and it could be even brighter out of frame, so we could really push that if you wanted to. Let's see, maybe I get a little bit up through this plane here. And right, we use it basically with this reflected light, we're using a really soft diffused light to kind of reverse render, right? Our primary light source is above, so that needs to stay the strongest. And that's our lit surface above, right? Our number one side. And then a little bit of reflected light from below. And any forms that are in the cast shadow side, and you want to show them, right? You need to use reflected light to do that. And let's see, this thing's probably a little bit more vertical, so that thing could go a little bit darker. And you can see by painting over now, you could just start cleaning this up and going, and it would start to look more and more photoreal because I would be getting rid of my line sketch, right? Let's just grab a big 100% opaque airbrush here, and you'll see that as I start to do that, okay, now I'm starting to deal without the line, which was originally my sketch, and I'm starting to deal with only surface. And when you switch from line to surface, right, the only way you start to show nice lines is you have to have two nice surfaces to show edges. So you got to really start to refine your surfacing if you want to have nice edges start to show up. So just keep cruising around here, put a little radius on that. Maybe throw a little radius here. And I'm working on a 21-inch Cintiq, and let's add a little bit more of a radius on that edge. And I tend to just work this way. I'm not zooming in, just trying to work quickly and trying to get some of the forms basically just to go bump. So I'm using my raw sketch there, letting that drive these cut lines and see if I like it or not. And then come in and clean up areas like this. So maybe this blends up into the window plane, so it's got to have a little bit of a vertical transition which means if I want to see a form change through there, right, from this more horizontal plane up into this more vertical plane, I should show a value change. And if I show a value change, right, your brain will start to interpret that as being a change in the form, because I'm not getting any change from the perspective, it's just a side view, right? So I have to do it all with value. So I think in a way these are nice exercises to do, because you really have to think with a value, because you don't have the perspective. So it's just exactly for that reason that you have to work your values if you want to start to turn surfaces, because you don't have anything else to do it. And also it's a nice way to just work in grayscale, because you can just concentrate on the form. Maybe I will zoom in again just so it looks a little bit better when you're watching it back. In this case, I'm just using a simple airbrush. Of course you could use a much more textured brush and get a different look, something a bit more illustrative, like if I was using, let's see, here's a brush. Let's see what this one does. Alrighty. Okay, this brush has got, actually, see, it's basically just a line, and by stroking over it there, you sort of can start to do, not really contour lines, again, because they're side view, but you just add more texture to the surface. Another one, I could use Danny Gardner's brush here, and I could paint over this guy, and you see get a little bit of texture. Another one I like is, I use these quite a bit, these hard-edged elliptical brushes. And you'll see you won't get as nice a gradation, of course, but you can get a little bit more painterly texture as a result. So you just have to kind of use a light touch and work your way around. But it's all, personal preference, whatever you're going for. Of course, we could all do all the weathering techniques and things that I've also already put up on the channel. But in this case, we're just trying to quickly show some form. And now we're starting to, I'm starting to experiment and refine the forms that are there. And now this is really the most fun part, I think, is when you get your base forms working, and generally everything looks three-dimensional. And now you really start to go back and sculpt the form, and this becomes about as close as you can get, I think, to working on clay. If you're a sculptor, you'll know that working with clay is a great medium for showing form, and it's really immediate. And I used to sculpt a lot, and not so much lately, but still love it. And this is about as close as I get to it lately, is just through Photoshop. So in fact, let's make that little cut line right there show up. Okay, then it's going to fade as it crosses underneath and has to drop into shadow below that core shadow. And now if I want to keep that cut line, maybe I'll make it a bit stronger. And then you just start picking the background. Now this is when you get to thinking it's a bit sloppy, this technique, in that I can't go back and just freely change the background, because I'm painting with the background value to clean up my silhouette. Okay, but this is very much what you want to do when you're used to painting with traditional media. This is kind of how you would work. You come back and clean up your silhouette with your cleaning up your background. It just doesn't leave you a lot of freedom, right? Because it's a digital piece. It'd be nice if we could change out the background. But because I'm painting on my spaceship layer with the background color and value, right? You'll see what's going to happen here in a minute. You lose the freedom to easily drop in a different background or paint some clouds or something behind it, because it's got all of these values. If I turn that off, you can start to see I painted in there, right? I guess the easiest thing to do is just do this, and I'll show you. You can start to see that, oh, there's all the stuff I just painted. Okay, so I can't just swap that out. So my cleanup, once you do that, you sort of just are committing yourself to using that background. Or you have to try and pull that shape off of the background again. That's really about it for this week's demo. Let's see, what else do I want to play with? I mean, all the forms are generally blocked in. So that's how I would approach a really fast block in, and then really it's design time, and it would just be tweaking and sculpting and keep on working and refining all the forms, and getting rid of the lines, and then probably colorize it, add some textures. You could always do the weathering paths, etc. But that's kind of it. Maybe I'll clean up a little bit this silhouette, just a little bit there. But that's really all the steps, and now it's just kind of noodle time, and keep working it, refining the forms, the volumes, little cut lines, the radii, the fillets, the planes, adding graphics. It's nice. I'll do a really nice quick demo of that. Let's say that now I really want to see the value graphics of this. I'd like that plane, that little loop right through there, and maybe I want to see this element right here. Those are different material. So I do Command Shift J, new layer via copy, and then I'm just going to do a levels adjustment, and let's just darken those down just a really quick darken down, like they were maybe painted like a matte black rubber or something. And then you just go back and, whoops, sorry, where is that coming from? Oh, I know why, because I did Command Shift J, sorry. That was a, Command Shift J is a via cut, and I didn't want to cut those. I wanted to do, there we go. So Command J is copy. Sorry, I did Command Shift J, which would cut them, and that's when I started erasing. You saw the background value. Okay, there we go. Now we'll do Command L, and we'll darken those down like so, and then we will go back, or I will go back and erase that little silhouette. So right up to my cut line. And of course, if you're doing a really tight render, you would do this with a path probably, but this is definitely not. Sorry, a really tight render, you would do that. A quick render is what this is, and I just want to see it, and so this is a really fast way to just see, does that work graphically? Is that what I want to have dark versus light? Yeah, better to probably even do that with a layer mask. You can see I went too far there, but I can just repaint that. But if you were being a little smarter about it, you just use a layer mask, and that way if you wanted to change the shape, you wouldn't have to re-render it. Okay, but I'm being impatient today. So there you go. And then we could always layer in the details, if there's some mechanical tech in here, etc. Just go further and further. And then let's put those together. And what's nice about being on a separate layer, well, good and bad, if I wanted to start to play with the overall contrast of this, right, we have that control, unfortunately, right, where I clean up my background, that's going to show up. So there's again, the reason to stay disciplined and work on separate layers is it allows you the freedom later to play with these things without those little scruffy edges showing back up. But you can start to play with contrast. And once you have all your values there, this is a really simple thing to do. So I love using the levels adjuster, right, to tweak that. And you see in a lot of my renderings, I do a lot of the last sort of image tweaking right at the very end. Do I like that? It's probably a little less accurate for a matte surface, but it also pops a little more if it was just going to stay a grayscale sketch. Unfortunately, again, it shows up my background, so I'm going to not do that. Not that this needs to be that finished. Anyway, that I think is going to have to do it for this week. Again, I apologize. Swamped this week trying to get out of town. I'm doing a little speaking engagement tomorrow night at UC State Long Beach. That's where I am tomorrow night, and then on a plane Friday heading to Shanghai, and I think I'll be visiting Tongji University. I think it might be open to the public, so if you're all the way in China, I know you can't listen to this YouTube, but anyway, hope to see people there. So anybody, oh, you can tell I'm tired this week. Everybody have a great week, and I will be back to posting a free tutorial Friday, the first week of April. So everybody be well. Bye bye.